The Fighting Irish have been fighting all this expansion talk, but you know what? I think the Big Ten might force their hand and force them to join the Big Ten. What do you think? Lockdown Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. And of course, we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. The Fighting Irish fighting for independence until the Big Ten has its way. Plus, the latest on the Ohio State quarterback battle. That's going down on the wire before their game against the Hoosiers. We'll check in on Tom Allen's camp and all of his transfer portal kids, plus our Big Ten top 10 size matters. You want to hang around for that at the end as well. Be sure to subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Well, if you watch this podcast with any kind of regularity, you know we like to talk about conference expansion a lot, particularly as it involves the Big Ten. It's happening before our very eyes. We have not spent a lot of time talking about Notre Dame. We've talked about the Pac-12 teams and ACC teams, and the Notre Dame question is always floating out there. And I get a lot of questions about it from you guys on the comments here on YouTube as well. One of the reasons we haven't spent a lot of time talking about it yet is because, look, Notre Dame is like an ostrich keeping its head in the sand. They're like, nope, we're staying independent. We're not messing with any of this. And so we haven't done too much on it yet. But I think, so a lot of articles this past weekend. I do a lot of reading. I know you guys do too. A lot of speculation about Notre Dame. Will the Big Ten or any other conference for that matter force Notre Dame's hand into joining a conference? So since you guys are asking me about it, let's do it. Let's talk about it. Lots to talk about with Notre Dame and the Fighting Irish. Of course, Andrea Adelson of ESPN.com, she said there really hasn't been a lot of serious conversation between Florida State leaving the ACC to come to the Big Ten, or members of the Big Ten talking to Florida State, so on and so forth. I know we've spent a lot of time on this podcast talking about that possibility. She says recently that Notre Dame remains the priority for the Big Ten right now. How about that? And also added that, all the Florida State talk, that Florida State isn't quite up to the academic standards of the Big Ten. Those aren't my words. Those are what, other people are saying. So let's talk about Notre Dame a little bit. And, if Notre Dame were to come, another thing that keeps coming up is they would want to bring Cal and Stanford with them. Of course, the Big Ten just hit the brakes on those two schools a couple of weeks ago, decided to stop at Washington and Oregon. So maybe that's part of it. Don't know. We'll evaluate that for more conversation as well. But when the Big Ten and the SEC and Big 12 are done expanding, if Notre Dame remains independent at that point, are they still going to be able to schedule enough good teams on their 12-game schedule? Or will they have to fill the gaps with lesser schools, have a weaker schedule, and then all of a sudden put their playoff hopes in jeopardy at that point? Look, the Big Ten and the Big 12, right now, they play 9 conference games in their 12-game schedule. As you all know, the SEC has been holding fast at 8. There's been talk every year about them expanding to having 9 SEC games, conference games on the schedule. Decided to go for it. It feels like this year's the last year for 8. They're going to have to go to 9. But I will argue if these conferences continue to grow they get to 20, 24, maybe 26 teams. I think they're going to have to jump to 10 conference games each and every year to fill out their 12-game schedule. And what that'll do is that'll allow 2 other games to play with, and you can have one cupcake warm up. Coaches don't like it when I use the phrase cupcake. They have respect for everybody, as do I. But one lesser game, if you will, and then use that other opening in the schedule to schedule a non-conference regional rival. For example, Florida and Florida State. One's in the SEC, one's in the ACC for now. They always play each other. South Carolina versus Clemson. Once Washington moves to Big Ten, they'll still want to play Washington State no matter what conference they are. So that will allow for that. That really doesn't allow a lot of room for Notre Dame at this point. So I don't know who's going to schedule Notre Dame with those kind of parameters. You know, for example, take a Michigan football team. They're already going to have Ohio State. They're going to have Penn State. They're going to have Michigan State. They're going to have USC and or UCLA. Why would they want to add Notre Dame to that gauntlet of teams to play on their schedule? It's going to be hard for Notre Dame to get a good quality schedule under these circumstances as they're playing out if we want to look forward into the future. Plus, you know, teams, they'll want their minimum of 7 home games every year. I mean, is Notre Dame, you know, they want the ticket revenue. But if people aren't going to have room, or maybe they can put the squeeze on Notre Dame, you know, is Notre Dame willing to settle on 5 home games in South Bend? I don't think so. That's going to be pretty tough. Plus, Notre Dame has its current agreement with the ACC. And if you're unfamiliar with the details, I'm sure many of you are, but let's just go over them real quick. Notre Dame, all their sports except for hockey and football belong to the ACC. And so they are aligned with the conference. The hockey's in the Big Ten and football is independent, but they schedule 5 games every year, football in the ACC, to help fill out their schedule. That is their agreement. So, and I don't know how confident they are that the ACC will remain intact in their current form. Maybe Notre Dame would be a little nervous about that. I would be. In the meantime, let's look at something else. Let's look at, everybody knows NBC and Notre Dame. They've been in bed together for decades, really. And, you know, back in the day, when Notre Dame could say to recruits, hey, we're on national TV every week. We're on NBC. It used to be a big deal. It's not anymore because you can see virtually every college football game every weekend. If you have a favorite team, your favorite Big Ten team, you can find it every Saturday. And you know it's either going to be on Fox, NBC, CBS, or the Big Ten Network or Peacock, right? It's pretty simple. You can watch every one of your, if you're a Michigan fan, if you're an Ohio State fan, if you're a Penn State fan, if you're a Rutgers or Northwestern fan, you can find your games every single week on TV. So Notre Dame saying, hey, we're on national TV on NBC every week, doesn't have the same cachet it had back in the day. Currently, Notre Dame gets about $30 million a year from its TV deal. Now, $22 million comes from football only with NBC. The rest of it comes from that horrible ACC grant of rights deal that we have talked about at length on this podcast. So word is Notre Dame wants to double or triple its TV rights. Its deal with Notre Dame is for 2 more years. This year, 2023, and 2024. Then it's over with, and they're going to be renegotiating. They're not going to wait for the 2 years either. They're probably starting on it right now. So they're looking for $65 to $75 million a year. They think they can get it. They still think they're the special brand, that they'll be able to get their own deal with a network, whether it be NBC or somebody else at this point. So $65 to $75 million a year, we're talking Big Ten money. We did a whole thing on that last week on how much money the Big Ten actually thinks they're going to be upwards around $80 to $100 million a year. So that's a lot of money. And, you know, the Big Ten and Notre Dame, they currently already have deals with NBC in place. Again, one's about to expire with Notre Dame, but I'm just saying, maybe there's something in the works there. The networks have a lot of power. NBC might want to say to Notre Dame, hey, get on over there to the Big Ten. Let's see what happens. Plus, maybe the Big Ten may be able to squeeze because of the scheduling situation for Notre Dame. The Big Ten, turns out they were strong enough to cause the demise of the Pac-12 effectively. Question is, are they strong enough to force Notre Dame to choose a conference finally? There's one other element about Notre Dame also remaining independent, and that is as long as the rules allow them a path to get to the playoff, that's another argument for them to stay independent. If that ever goes away, then they'll have to join a conference. Now, a lot of the rules for the playoffs, the 12-team playoff, favors Power 5 schools. I don't know if the Pac-12 isn't going to count as a Power 5 anymore. Obviously, there's going to have to be new rules in place. And maybe with the new rules that are coming, they're going to tell Notre Dame to go ahead and get themselves in a conference. What do you think? Hit me up on Twitter at TalkBig10 or on the comments on YouTube. I get to all those, so I always appreciate that. Love to hear what you think about it. Plus, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the last couple of podcasts, we've been kind of keeping an eye on the Ohio State Buckeyes quarterback situation. And the word coming off the weekend is they may choose a starting quarterback as soon as today as they get ready for their season opening game against the Indiana Hoosiers. Speaking of the Hoosiers, we'll check in with their camp as well. Completely revamped team from the transfer portal. So we'll have all that, thoughts on both of those situations coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. Whether you're putting a team together for the season or putting teams together for a conference, everybody's trying to win a championship. Same thing happens in your office. If you need to hire somebody, you want to hire the right person. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your business. And you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's real easy to post a job, but it's not. Before this, it wasn't easy to find people. If you had to hire somebody, that was stress. It was a lot of extra work. You want to make sure you get the right person. LinkedIn Jobs makes it so much easier. You post your job. You got the purple hashtag hiring frame. Your LinkedIn profile is there to spread the word that you are hiring, get the word out. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and eventually hire and add to your team. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So we've talked a lot about Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes and the quarterback battle between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. Many, myself included, thought that QB1 would be Kyle McCord. He's more experienced, he was highly recruited, brought in there. But word is either Devin Brown has been better or Kyle McCord hasn't been that great in camp so far. So coming off this weekend, there's a lot of speculation that Ryan Day may announce a starter as soon as today. So we'll have that. And by the way, if I hear it throughout the day, I'll go ahead and hit you on Twitter at TalkBig10. But the Buckeyes' first opponent is Indiana in Bloomington on September 2nd. I'm checking with their camp as well. Speaking of the Hoosiers, Tom Allen getting ready for his 7th season as head coach for the Hoosiers. He's got a 30-40 record thus far. He was the Big Ten Coach of the Year in 2020, but he's had 2 disappointing seasons since then. For those of you listening on audio, I'm posting a picture of him up right now with a bullhorn. It always cracks me up because he is a loud and intense guy. Everybody wants to run through a brick wall for him. I don't think he ever needs a bullhorn. Well, actually, the last time I heard him, he was pretty raspy from all the yelling and enthusiasm. So maybe he does need the bullhorn for that to help the old vocal cords. But I always affectionately like to laugh when I see that. So anyway, he's done a total revamp with this football team. officially, as of now, it's 23 new players from the transfer portal in Bloomington. Many are going to be expected to contribute right away. They have to. It's a lot of urgency this year in Bloomington. And we'll see how quickly they all can gel together. And they've got the big game to start it off with. No easy takeoff spot. It's Ohio State in week 1. Offensive coordinator Walt Bell says the team is learning to run his offense as fast as possible in space. And I don't mean learn it fast, run it fast, quickly. They snap the ball early. It's up tempo all the time. Last year, they averaged snapping the ball with 21 seconds still left on the play clock. They don't sit around. They really hurry. And the install can be a little bit of a challenge. You got 23 new people. A lot of those are offensive players. So they're new. They got to figure it out quickly on the fly, but also they're new, but they're experienced players. Usually transfer portals or players are a little older, veterans, and they can pick things up quickly. And that's what Indiana is really hoping to have happen. Tom Allen says he loves the effort. He also talks about integrating 23 players into a system and that they're veterans and they got to learn the culture. They got to learn it fast. He also talked about the quarterback battle they have on. Now, last year, they went through a lot of quarterbacks, and they finished out the year with Dexter Williams, who showed a lot of promise as a dual threat star. But he was injured in the Purdue game. It was one of those gruesome injuries you don't want to look at on the second replay on TV. And, that Purdue game's the last game of the season, and this is about a year-long injury recovery. And so he's not ready yet. So they got a couple of young guys. Taven Jackson, as you know, the brother of Trace Jackson Davis, coming over from Tennessee. Tom Allen says kid's got a lot of moxie, his word, and confidence. And then there's Brendan Sorsby, who has got a lot of arm talent. If he gets into trouble, can use his legs to scoot on out of there. And we'll see who comes out at quarterback. Just like Ohio State, Indiana has not decided who their starting quarterback is for that game. Maybe we'll see like 4 different quarterbacks between the two teams in that season opener between the Buckeyes and the Hoosiers. Another thing that is new this year, Tom Allen will not be calling defensive plays this year. Some years he does, some he doesn't. But he decided in this day and age where he's got to take care of nil, name, image, and likeness and transfer portal, he needed to delegate that out a little bit. So Matt Guerrieri, he's coming in from Ohio State, going to be the defensive coordinator. And being from Ohio State, he very familiar with the Big Ten. This is a team that did not have a lot of tackles for loss, turnovers, or sacks last year. In fact, last in the Big Ten in those categories. And they lost 9 of their top 10 tacklers. But they are excited about the new players that are coming in this year, especially up front. Andre Carter from Western Michigan, just a big, high motor guy on the defensive line, going to add a lot of pressure to quarterbacks. And of course, Guerrieri says their defensive DNA is takeaways, tackles, and effort. So that's who they want to be this year. And another note, Aaron Casey, linebacker, he is going to wear the honorary number 44 jersey. And for those that aren't familiar with the Indiana tradition, George Taliaferro wore that number back in the day, like 60, 70 years ago. And he went on to become the first African-American player drafted in the National Football League. He was an Indiana football player. So it's an honor to wear that number 44. Aaron Casey will be wearing it this year. He's very excited about that. He's excited about the new defensive lineman ahead of him, helping him out as he plays linebacker. And he's expecting good things for the Hoosier defense this year. So excited about that. Always want to thank you guys for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. Note to you everydayers, our Locked On Big Ten roundtable that I've been teasing and promoting and saying it's coming up. It's here. The one I did with other Locked On hosts from other Big Ten schools. I don't know when you're consuming or watching this. This podcast is for August 21st. If you catch it in the morning, I will tell you later on today at 3:00 Eastern is when our ultimate college football preview on Locked On Big Ten comes out. 3:00 Eastern. If you're watching this later in the day, it's already come out. Go find it. It is well worth it. It's a lot of fun. Again, the ultimate college football preview on Locked On Big Ten. Talking all Big Ten with my other Locked On colleagues from around the league. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe. We are getting closer and closer to that 3,000 subscriber number. You can make it happen by helping us out. Totally appreciate that. The rest of you share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten. It'll be helping me out. It'll be helping us out in our little group here. Always appreciate it. Coming up, our next weekly feature is our Big Ten Top 10. We're going to look at Big Ten stadiums, current and future Big Ten stadiums. That's all coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. So on Mondays of each week during the season, we're going to do the Big Ten Top 10. And what that is typically going to do is I'm going to make 10 observations for the weekend. Maybe 10 great players, teams, great plays, amazing games, bad calls, whatever. I'm going to put it in a top 10 list together every Monday and share it with you. Throughout the offseason, since we haven't had the games, been always doing something different. So I'm going to put something on the screen here for those of you listening on audio only. I'll describe today. Just decided to point out the list, Big Ten Top 10, the top 10 stadiums in the Big Ten size-wise, but I've added everybody here, and I've also added the new teams, kind of compare their stadiums. It's up on screen. As many of you suspect, Michigan is the biggest capacity in the league at 107,601. They have had over 100,000 people. Well, the streak was 293 straight games, going back to a 1975 game against the Indiana Hoosiers, where only 93,000 people showed up. Ever since then, it was 293 straight. Then COVID happened. The streak is over, but they're back at it. The second biggest stadium in the Big Ten, of course, is Penn State at 106,500. Ohio State, 102,780. So 3 schools over 100,000 in that. Nebraska at 85,000. Wisconsin at 82,000. I got to get to Camp Randall. Everybody tells me how awesome it is to see a game there. Nebraska, too, for that matter. Michigan State, 75,005. Very specific number there. Come on, Michigan State. You got to add on to that stadium. You know who they're bigger, and I'm not going to say they're bigger in Ann Arbor. That's just going to upset a lot of people. Iowa, Kinnick Stadium, 70,000. Their women's basketball team just sold out, by the way. I don't think they're sold out yet for Iowa football. Illinois coming in at number 8 at just over 60,000. Purdue at 57,000 and change. Just revamped that stadium as well at Ross 8. It's 100 years old. New scoreboard, elevators, new turf. I saw before and after the turf. They got the green grass in. It looks real good. And Indiana at 52,009, rounding out the top 10 in stadium capacity in the Big Ten. And they're surveying season ticket holders now on additions and changes they want to make at Memorial Stadium in Bloomington, by the way. Decide not to leave anybody out here, just out of curiosity. Minnesota at number 11, 52,000. Rutgers, 52,000. Maryland at almost 52,000. And Northwestern is the smallest in the Big Ten at 47,000, although Kyle Field, I think they're getting ready to make some more renovations there. They just did with the practice facility. Now they want to work on the football stadium. And as we continue, 4 more schools coming in. The USC Coliseum at 77.5, although it could go over 100,000 if they want to. But at 77.5, that would make it the 6th largest stadium in the Big Ten. The UCLA Rose Bowl, again, currently configured for 91,000, but they can get it over 100,000 if they had to. That would rank 4th. And when the Washington Huskies come to the Big Ten, Husky Stadium, 70,000. That would be the 8th biggest in the Big Ten. And Oregon's Autzen Stadium coming in at 54,000. That would make them the 10th biggest stadium in the Big Ten. That's always interesting to look at as well. A lot of fun. So I want to thank everybody for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen every day. You every day is our next show. We're going to have the latest from the Big Ten camps. And again, depending on when you're watching this, morning, afternoon, what your routine is, look out for our Locked On Big Ten Roundtable podcast with other Locked On podcasters. It's the ultimate college football preview. It is supposed to come out at 3 p.m. Eastern time on Monday, August 21st. So if that hasn't happened yet, be on the lookout for it. If you're catching this later, go back and find it. It will be worth your while. Many ways to interact with me as well on Twitter at Talk Big Ten, and be sure to subscribe, and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app, and you'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it is available each and every day. Now I want to invite you to not only go find our ultimate college football preview, but also check out Locked On Sports Today, that podcast with the latest on everything going on in sports. In the meantime, have yourself a great day, everybody. Thanks again. Really enjoyed our time. Can't wait to talk to you again tomorrow. I'm Craig Schreeman for Locked On Big Ten.